And joining us now is Representative John Burt, currently representing the towns of Goffstown and Ware, running for re-election in Goffstown only, as Goffstown's officially a big boy town now. It has its own representatives. Except for it has to share one of them with Ware and Deering. And our good friend Mark Warden is running for that seat. So, John, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience, who you are, what you do what you do professionally, and why are you looking to go back into the cauldron of death again?
Well, that is true. People do want to know why I want to go up there for $100 a year. Well, I'm representative.
I thought it was $100 for the whole two-year term.
Oh, no. It's $100 a year.
Oh,
but our badge cost, I think it's $18. License plates are $18. Time you get your business cards and everything else. Oh, they take Social Security out of it, so there isn't much left at the end.
I mean, they don't treat you all as an independent contractor and cut you a $100 check. They put you on a W-2.
$183 or something like that. I think that's what it was last time.
They put you as a W-2, so they take out Medicare and Social Security?
They do. I've been self-employed since 1990, and I have not received a W-2 ever since 1990, and I didn't want one. So I told them, I said, look, I can live without the $100, just give it back to the people. And they said, well, you'll still get the W-2. And I said, oh, all right, well, send me the $100.
Convert it into hot dogs. That's what we need.
Yes, yeah.
So, John, let's talk about you now that we've got this foolishness out of the way.
Yeah. Well, I'm Representative John Burt, and I asked the voters for their vote on September 11th. September 11th is very important. The primary, because there is 8 of us running for 5 seats, and it's only the 5 that get through. There's going to be 3 of us that are going to go home, and I asked the voters, for me not to be one of them.
Okay, so I'm sorry, John. It's getting loud here at Radio Row, and I was adjusting my headsets. Go ahead.
Hey, John, I've been thinking, because I'm running as well over in Ward 2 in Manchester. I was thinking about legislation that I might like to file in the coming legislative term. What are some of the thoughts you've been having about potential laws, or maybe the repeal of some potential laws that's on your mind for your legislative agenda going into the new term if you're fortunate enough to be reelected?
Well, I sit on the House Municipal and County Government Committee, and I love that committee. And the reason is because it's the closest to the people, I believe, one of the closest committees. My committee oversees laws that the towns are allowed to do. For example, one of them was the sprinkler bill. They were going to force sprinklers into every new home. But there was a little clause that they didn't tell us, that any remodeling, they can force sprinklers into your home. Could you imagine having an old home and being forced to put sprinklers in it?
Yeah, Representative Hawkins, I think, was talking about that yesterday. Is a bill that would pull back the fire marshal who was forcing the implementation of a fire prevention code.
Or kill the home remodeling business, too. I mean, it would just kill it.
Oh, it would. Well, every fire chief that sat in front of me, they did not like when my hand went up, because I asked them, every one of them, I said, do you, sir, and thank you for your service, I was always polite, do you, sir, have a sprinkler in your home? And they said no. Every one of them said no. And I said, then why?
That's not fair, Representative Burt. How dare you ask such a question?
Well, I said, why should you force us to have a sprinkler in our homes? And they didn't have an answer. But some of the bills I would like to bring forward is definitely an ethics bill. I'm working on it currently right now. So when I get reelected, this is one of the bills. New Hampshire is one of the worst states on ethics. It's extremely tight. We're not allowed to do anything, which is good to a point. But then we don't have a lot of disclosure, and I want to change that. I think the government should be very open to the public. Everything we do as a state representative or even a selectman or anything in the town capacity or state capacity should be in front of the voters. The other one is a campfire permit bill. I fought that bill last year and almost won it. That's how Hot Dog Day came out, and I'm going to be probably introducing something there to do away with campfire permits.
Campfire permits, you mean in cities and towns in general, and the need to have one?
Yep, yeah. In the back, if you want to bring your children or your grandchildren in the back of your yard and have just a small little campfire, You have to call the government and beg for a permit. You're not allowed to do that.
Okay, and how did that? And what's this hot dog thing?
Well, what happened is when I got on the House floor to fight this bill, because it came in front of me from another state representative, I didn't realize. I hope the statute of limitations over, but I told every state representative, I said, now look, if you help me pass this bill, which was going to repeal the campfire permits process, I said, I will invite you to my house to have a campfire without a permit and to enjoy a delicious hot dog with me. Well, so what ended up happening, I was only like, I think it was 8 or 10 votes away from winning, so that was pretty close. And so what I did is I put on Hot Dog Day and invited everybody in the house, including staff. That was the biggest thing that I wanted out there. And we had over 500 people, including the governor and senators and everybody. And I hosted a Hot Dog Day up on the State House front lawn with 2 campfires. I did have permits for those campfires.
Now,
so
John,
we had a great
first
time.
Term, correct? John?
Yes.
You are in your first term, correct?
I am.
And you did something unusual for a freshman. You actually got a fairly major piece of legislation signed by the governor, and that was House Bill 582. Why don't you tell us about that bill and why you introduced it?
Well, what 582 does is it's relative to communications between employers and the employees.
Oh, and by the way, Girard Large time is 7:16. We are on the phone with Representative John Burt of Goffstown and Ware. He's running for re-election to the House from the town of Goffstown. It got its big boy pants, which means it's got its own representatives, doesn't need to share anymore. And John is talking to us about his record and what he'll do in the future. Sorry, John, I needed to throw that in there in case anyone tunes in.
No, I appreciate it, Rich. What 582 does is it's not for the employer and it's not against the unions. And both said that it was against the unions, and it was not. Or what the union said that. What this does is it's for the employees. During negotiations, which I did not realize this, but during negotiations in a union contract, the employer is not allowed to talk to the employees. Only the union is. So the employer says, hey, union, this is what I want to give to the employees. Well, if the union doesn't like it, they will go and tell the employees, look, this is a bad bill or a bad contract, don't vote for it, et cetera, et cetera. They might not give 100% of the information. If that happens today, or as of January 2013, since the governor signed this, the employer can go to the employees and say, whoa, the union misspoke. This is what I'm offering you. This is for the employees. This is a win-win. And I was real happy that the governor signed it, and he even saw the benefits in it.
Well, that's quite a feat to get something the governor the unions don't want to get the governor to sign.
It was. Yeah, I personally went and saw the governor, and I asked him, please, pass this through. This is a good bill, and I explained just like I did to you. This is not against the unions. This is not pro, business. This is knowledge to the employees. That's all the intent was here.
Now, John, you were also the prime sponsor of another bill that met with a different fate. It was House Bill 1305, also known as the poll tax bill. If you're reelected, first of all, I'd like you to explain what that bill is to our listeners, and if reelected, will you bring this bill back?
There is talk right now that I'm talking with the phone companies and some other people to bring it back, especially just to study how the telecommunications are taxed. And what this bill does is it basically is a new tax that the Democrats passed 2 years ago. The Republicans could have stopped it, and unfortunately they did not. Who's at blame? Some say the Democrats. Well, I blame both parties for this, because it should have never passed.
Okay, John, I think it's important that people know exactly what this poll tax is. I'd like you to give some context for what problem were you trying to solve here?
What I was trying to solve is to keep the exemption on property on the poll tax, which is the telephone poles.
So right now, if your bill had passed, the local cities and towns would not be able to tax telephone poles.
That's right, because because there is the CST tax, so in a sense, and that's the communication service tax. So in a sense, they're being taxed twice, because the CST tax, the communication service tax, back in the early 90s, did away with the poll tax that the state was charging. And they said no more poll tax.
It did away with it and replaced it with the CST tax.
Yes.
And 2 years ago, the Democrats did something to eliminate the exemption, so now the cities and towns want to come in and levy that tax on the telephone poles.
They do, and they're doing it.
Well, now, there was a fair amount of opposition from the cities and towns on this. How do you, as a state rep, reconcile that with the ability of cities and towns to raise their own revenues?
Well, I tell them to live within their means, and they're not. They're looking for any way they can raise taxes, quietly, and this is a quiet tax. And what this affects is businesses and the poor, and that's why I fought this. And plus, it's a new tax, and I said I would not pass a new tax. But,
so we can expect to hear something on this topic again from you. Well, but the cities and towns will turn around, John, and say, we've suffered a lot of downshifting. We've had to absorb a lot of expenses that the state pushed on us as it tried to fix its budget problems. So why shouldn't we be able to collect this tax?
Well, for one, it's a tax on poor and the businesses. So I think it's a wrong tax. If they're going to tax somebody, let's tax somebody that can afford it, but not the poor. And it's a kind of a hidden tax. People don't see it. But right now, on your Fair Point bill, if you look, starting March of this year, you'll see a 99-cent municipal tax written on it. And we could have stopped it.
Interesting. All right, John, if people want to learn more about your campaign for re-election, you personally or anything else, how best do they do that?
Well, the best way is Burt, NH, so it's BURTNH, like New Hampshire, .com. And
It's
if
Burt,
they want to give me
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And if they want to give me a call, I'm always open, 289-0792, and that's in New Hampshire. And I also have a Facebook, John A. Burt. I'm open to anybody, so you don't have to friend me. You can just pop on and look at what I have on my page.
All right, John, thank you so much for being with us here this morning on Girard at Large and for the work you do in the legislature. We look forward to speaking to you in the near future.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thanks, Mike and Dave and everybody, and have a great time down there.
All right, that's John. That's John Burt, representative of Goffstown and Ware, running for re-election in the town of Goffstown, which, as I've said many times, and I think it's funny, got its big boy pants. It's got its own representatives. Now, you learn more about John at burtnh.com.